Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we are back with another Mercenaries video. This one is going to be covering one of the recent additions in the last major patch, the fatigue system that was implemented as a way to kind of help deal with the tie issues Mercenaries has had throughout the course of its life cycle since the launch, but more specifically when they got more prominent with the release of Sinestra a few drops ago. So, if you don't know, they added a fatigue system to the game. Now, after 10 turns have passed, you will get a little fatigue marker thing that comes up. It tells you you are in fatigue. And what fatigue does in Mercenaries is it doubles the damage of pretty much almost everything. So your base damage, if I attack with Sinestra versus a red or versus another green, I'm going to be dealing damage like I am critting. And if you would normally crit for double damage, you actually deal 4 times damage. So this is a pretty interesting change. One thing worth noting is you do not take double residual damage. So if I swing into something and I take damage from its attack, that damage will not be doubled, but pretty much every other instance of damage is doubled. So this was an interesting fix to the problem, and it did help in a way, but it's not a perfect solution by any means, so we're going to take a look at why. So with this kind of solution, it is possible to win with Sinestra in a Sinestra v Sinestra off. However, that possibility of winning is pretty much reliant on your opponent and you being not on the same, basically, time. So you're not using Twilight Extinction the same turn. You have to be on a different rotation where they're using Extinction and you are using Barrier. So that's kind of one weird thing. I do have some gameplay here. Shout out to Izzy's, another awesome Mercenaries player and streamer as of recent. I will leave his link in the description below. Definitely go check him out. Always nice to support our Mercenaries content creation community. So anyway, we tested some stuff out, and I'll throw some gameplay up of that now. But what we found out is, and we were just mainly testing with base max Sinestra. Basically, if you don't have any HP buffs, it is possible to win if you are not doing your skills at the same time your opponent does by attacking in and having the damage from Twilight Extinction. However, this is kind of a weird thing because if you are on the same time as your opponent, if you are using your skills at the exact same time, it does still result in a tie, but from what we've seen, this tie is preferable to how it tied before, because instead of having to use a skill or just both of you pass for another 10 or 15 turns or whatever the turn limit is in PvP, now you just both die and the game ends. So that is a preferable solution in terms of if the game is going to be a tie, it just ends a lot sooner, because I think the worst part of the ties was the fact that it is really long and drawn out. So on that front, I think this was a success. It definitely kind of fixed part of the issue, which was players who didn't want to give their opponent a free win were stuck in a game for another 5, 10-ish minutes when they weren't really doing anything of substance. And that got even worse when some people decided to rope it out to try and convince their opponent to concede for that free win. So this did not solve all the ties with Sinestra, though, as what I have previously mentioned seems to only work when Sinestra does not have any additional HP buffs. And there are quite a few ways to give HP buffs in this game, as we all know, Cookie being the most prominent one, but we also have things like Tyrion and Yulon, which are pretty common mercs as well. And so basically, I have a clip here from Grumpy Stream, awesome German content creator who also streams Mercenaries, so I'll leave his link in the description below. Definitely check him out. But he had a game recently where both him and his opponent did get into a Sinestra tie scenario, and because both of these Sinestras had additional HP, it looks like they had the cookie buff as they were at 84 HP, which is +9. then they do not tie. So it fixed it a little bit for base Sinestra stuff, but if you have any kind of HP buff, especially if both Sinestras have that HP buff, it seems you still run into the same problem as before, where you just have to kind of click through and do the healing and whatnot over and over until you reach the eventual turn limit. So overall, this feels like kind of like a half, successful implementation of getting rid of like the ties and stuff. It's better than nothing. I'll definitely give it that. And I am curious to see how the fatigue system will end up working if we do ever get a slower meta again, kind of like we had in the last Dragon meta. It definitely had multiple games back then go to turn 10. So I'm really curious how this change is going to impact the meta if we do end up in a position where basically the games are naturally going longer. But most of the Mercenaries metagame history has been typically pretty aggressive. Most games are not getting to turn 10, so the fatigue system will not impact the majority of them most likely. But I thought this was really interesting. We have the Pauper Open 2 coming up, and one of the reasons I decided to not include Sinestra on the bans list was because of the fact that they implemented this new fatigue system. But now, after finding out that the ties can still happen, it's definitely got me a little worried there, because I hope we don't see a million ties basically in the tournament. But nonetheless, we're going to keep her off the ban list and just roll with it and see what happens. And we have established some rules. If there are ties, we will have the players regame. And if the tie happens a second time, it will be determined via coin toss, as we don't want to sit in games that are tying over and over and over again. But hopefully we won't have to deal with too much of that. Definitely check out the Pauper Open 2 if you're looking for a different way to play Mercenaries while we wait for the next big patch. Again, that's going to be happening next weekend, or I guess this weekend at the time of this going up, which is the 28th of May. So yeah, I'm very curious what everyone thinks about the fatigue change. I think it was a interesting idea and way to help solve the problem a bit. And like I said, it's kind of like a halfway there solution. It fixes a little bit of the problem, but not all the way, as this will still come up where you have these kind of games that you just have to wait out if both Sinestras have more HP. This hasn't been as big of a problem as it was in the last few metas, because Sinestra isn't seeing quite as much play in every comp, so you're not getting ties all the time, but it does still happen. So it's nice to see them do something to help with this, but it is a little surprising that it doesn't really deal with the problem if extra HP is involved. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Definitely let me know what you think about this new system in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe. But that is going to do it for me. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.